Yeah, so obviously, another week of the NBA gone through, and the Cleveland Cavaliers still without a loss. They are 15-0 to begin the season after their 128-114 win over the Cleveland Cavaliers. Donovan Mitchell did not play in this one, but it didn't matter, right? You ended up getting contributions from pretty much everybody, Ty Jerome stepping in, and that's kind of been the story of the Cavs this season, where pretty much everybody on the roster, by and large, is playing very well. I mean, obviously, like I mentioned, Mitchell was out, but you have Evan Mobley averaging 19 and 9. I mean, you got Jared Allen basically putting up his numbers, 15 and 11, right? Darius Garland having a major bounce back year, right, averaging 21 and 7. So I mean, this team is pretty much clicking on, all cylinders. I mean, you look at their offensive rating, number 1, and then you look at their defensive rating, 8th, but that's okay because they are the number 1 offense. And funny enough, that had been their problem by and large, because they had been a good defensive team pretty much since they've acquired Donovan Mitchell and they've had this group of guys together. But the offense was kind of, up and down. But also second best in net rating, right? 11.5, right? So they've been getting it done pretty much on both ends of the floor. So I mean, what do you kind of attribute this to? Because obviously we know that they did, make a coaching change, but it is kind of funny because, by and large, coaches usually don't have the reputation of being able to, make a huge difference, right? Like obviously at the NBA level, the main reasoning behind the success of the team is your roster, like your collection of players. But we have had some teams that have been able to kind of have a turnaround, and some of that is attributed to the coaching. But with this team, they didn't really make any significant changes to the roster. So, what are you kind of seeing from this team that kind of screams out to you that this might be a different team from last year? Because they've been a good regular season team, but they haven't gotten off to a start like this. I mean, the only other team that's had a start this great is the 73 win Warriors. That because they started off 24-0.
Yeah, I mean the thing that I kind of look at this team and see is similarities to last year, especially statistically in terms of like shooting percentages, stuff like that. Defense is arguably the same. But like you said, it's the offense. The offense is really, really potent, and it's definitely a system switch up because if you look at what they did last year, a little bit stagnant at times, a lot more isolation. Definitely, some interesting aspects where you bring in, involving Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, but now it looks fluid, and I think they've really taken a page out of Boston's book with the off-ball movement. Everybody's kind of scattering. They're creating so much motion that I think it kind of scares people and definitely tricks the opponent a lot because there's so much off-ball stuff going on. And I think also another thing that you kind of do have to factor in is Darius Garland has learned how to play off the ball magnificently alongside Donovan Mitchell and vice versa. It's a 1-2 punch combo that I don't think a lot of people thought could work. We still have yet to see it really, I guess, come to fruition in the playoffs, and that's kind of like the main question. But as a duo, they've been feeding off of each other perfectly. Even the rotational guys, the amount of swing passes are insane. Like I said, a lot of movement. Evan Mobley also being a big factor because I think he's like kind of like the median where you kind of look at him. He's doing a lot more ball handling, shot creation, passing. So overall, kind of honing his true potential, I think, because we knew that he could be an all-around star versus, kind of just some defensive anchor here and there. So overall, a lot has changed. The young guys have gotten better. The system is completely different, and everything's kind of going on the up and up alongside Kenny Atkinson and the amazing adjustments that he's made. Definitely no more stagnation on the offensive end.
Yeah, I mean, you look at, some of the more traditional offensive numbers. I mean, number 1 in field goal percentage by a decent amount. They're averaging 52% from the field, right? No other team is even at 50%, right? The next closest is the Knicks at 49.6. Number 1 in three-point percentage, right? 42% from 3 as a team. So like you said, kind of taking a page from the Celtics playbook in terms of spreading the floor with the three-point shooting, but they have the addition of more size, right, in the front court. Obviously, like with the Celtics, you have the wings, and obviously Porzingis is, super tall, but, for the Cavs, they have the two bigs. The two, guys that are basically, well, I mean, Jared Allen's not 7 feet, but, he does play like a 7 footer, and
Mm-hmm.
Mobley's 6'11". A lot to like, honestly, from the Cavs so far. It's just the main question, like you said, is, we have yet to see what this is going to look like once they actually hit the postseason. Because obviously, 2 seasons ago, they went out in the first round. Then they went out, in the second round last year, right? They got out of the first round, lost in the second round to the Celtics. So the question is, can they get any further, right? And, again, with the way the East has been so far, it's definitely possible just because, teams like Philly and Milwaukee are kind of behind right now, right? And, we've talked about them many times where, in the standings, it's tough for those teams because of the fact that they started the season off so poorly. Those teams have a lot of ground to make up. I mean, like the Bucks just lost the other day, as did the Sixers, right? So I mean, for them it's a little bit tough, but for Cleveland, they've already put in the work to get there. So it's kind of smooth sailing for them, right? Like at this point, they've obviously like nothing's clinched through the first 15 games, but it's very clear that so far, they've been an excellent team. It's just a matter of will this work in the postseason? But if you can get some of this to transfer over, then, you have a shot. It's just going to be tough because Boston still, I think, looms large, even though they don't have the number one record because they've already done it before. But, Cleveland looks legit this time.
Yeah, for sure. And, I know like numbers wise, some of the guys are like down. Like Donovan Mitchell is not like having like a crazy career year, but that's kind of a good thing in my opinion. Cause I think,
Yeah.
when you ask him to shoulder the load of a team entirely, I don't think that's the best situation that you could probably put him in. So, having these guys like really show that they could be great supporting pieces around him is really, really cool. Cause I didn't think it could be done. Like, I was high on their offseason because I like the fact that they brought in a coaching change. And that's kind of what you want when you have a solid group of guys, but they haven't really been able to get over the hump in, 2 or 3 years together or whatnot. The first thing you kind of do look at is the coach. And then from there, you would make adjustments and so on and so forth. So, them kind of running it back, bringing in a new coach, changing up the system is definitely like, kind of like the main thing that I think you can attribute to their massive success early in the season.
And again, if you're going to maximize this team, you have to get the most that you can out of everybody. And you did have some guys that weren't quite as good last season, right? Like Garland, as we mentioned, wasn't as good. A lot of that can be attributed to the health issue, right, with the broken jaw. But he's looked good, and like you said, all these guys playing well helps because you don't want Mitchell to have to average basically like 30 a game just for
Yeah.
them to be kind of competitive, right? Because you had a couple of playoff games last season against Orlando, right? Because that was before all their guys started kind of dropping out of the postseason due to injury. And Mitchell kind of had to do, his best impersonation of, like a Bulls Celtics Jordan performance, right? Where, there's not a whole lot around him and he kind of has to find a way to be able to single handedly do it. And you just can't because
Yeah.
you're going against, a team that's just deeper. So shout out to the Cavs for the start they've had this season. And you just kind of wonder how long can this keep going, right? Because I mean they're your pick to win the NBA Cup. So if they're gonna pull this off, they're gonna need to kind of win these games and especially win them by decent margins so they can have the advantage in the later rounds.
Yeah, and it's like I'll pose a question. Do you think that they can keep it up? Because I personally think that they can. It's just gonna have to be they can't deviate from the strategy. Like I said, they're going to have to continue to doing the great things that they're doing, the drive and kick opportunities. And the amazing thing is like they're generating a lot of open shots because of that movement. So as long as they don't revert back to stagnation, I think they'll be able to keep it up because I think their defense is going to hold up. And like you said, even like to bring in a guy like Jared Allen, I know we didn't talk about him too much, but a lot of people thought he was going to get traded. So,
Yeah.
if he continues to be the efficient above the rim, guy that he is, while also, being a great complementary piece to Evan Mobley, defensively, I think they have a shot to, continue this win streak.
Yeah, I mean, they've already won 15 in a row. So I mean, I think they've kind of at least shown that they have the ability to, be able to kind of keep this going. It's just like you said, it's just a matter of, can they not start to have multiple guys out due to injury, right? That are their key guys. Because I think you need at least a couple of those guys, right? Like you don't want to be down three, of those, 4 or 5 main guys, because that's kind of a problem because all of those guys are big time contributors for the team. So I think because of what we've seen on both ends of the floor, they should be able to, right? Because like, it'd be one thing if they were really good on one end, but not so great on the other end. But the fact that they're top 10 in both and they're number one in offense, I don't see a reason why it wouldn't. Obviously, people have talked about they've had some breaks because not every team they've played against has been that great,
Sure.
right? So, they're playing Boston, so the streak could end, right? And, we'll know not too long after this episode comes out, to see if the streak continues. But I think they can keep it going. It's just, again, they got to beat Boston. But even if they lose their next game, that doesn't make them frauds, right? I mean, like, because nobody expected them to be as good as they've been so far. So I think it's a testament to the changes that they've made that have been working. Like I said, I just want to see what this looks like in the postseason, right?
Yeah,
But so
agreed.
far, the fact that they're able to win all these regular season games will help them because they should be a top two seed pretty much by this point, unless they just have a horrible, stretch where they just completely collapse. You're going to have home court advantage, either as the 1 or the 2 seed. So that's what you want versus some of these other teams are going to have to sweat to get back to, just to get to like the 5 or 6 spot. So, and like the East as a whole, the records aren't great, but, Cleveland and Boston are the exceptions. So they're set. So I think, there's no real reason to kind of take your foot off the gas. You just got to stay healthy.
Yeah.